Get there.
Okay,
We'll get there.
A lot going on. Yeah, this was the surprise that you had teased
That was
us
a
about,
surprise,
right?
and our next surprise is Chris Valaika is with us
He's
5
with
minutes
us
early.
Yeah, let's bring him
What's
in.
up, Coach?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Chris, how are you?
Coach, great to see you. I have this is going to be a hard-hitting question. We're going to have fun, okay? We'll definitely have fun.
It's weird to say coach. I know he's a coach on the Guardians, but like baseball, you say manager, but he's not the manager. But like it's weird to say coach for baseball.
Is. Yeah, I know.
It's just
is.
a weird.
What do the guys call you? Do they call you coach or do they call you Chris?
No, Val.
Val. Okay, so we're going to refer to you from here on out as Val.
I can't believe you. I feel like you just played last year. I know you. You've been out of the league for 10 years almost, right?
It happens fast, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, life comes at you fast.
Yeah.
Coach, we are going to have some fun.
Val.
We got a lot of Val. Sorry.
Val. Yeah.
We got a lot of fun questions for you. But one thing that as I look at the roster and the way this team is built, and perhaps some of the bigger challenges that they'll have this coming season that didn't exist last year, is the sophomore slump. You guys had an unprecedented amount of success with young kids coming up. But now they all have books. Not that they didn't throughout the course of the season, but now we've had an off season to look at everybody. And the sophomore slump, as you know, is very real. And you've got a lot of guys that could fall in that bucket. What are you doing to make sure that they don't step back from the success they had in their rookie seasons?
Yeah, man, that's the $1 million question. That's the stuff that's been keeping me up at night through the off season.
I bet.
You know, I think the biggest thing though is trying to remove the pressure from those guys. You know, like having Quan coming off like rookie of the year caliber season, Jimenez all-star, silver slugger. You know, just trying to take the pressure off those guys that they don't have to feel like they need to repeat that success. They just need to be the best version of themselves. You know, so trying to keep the messaging around that. You know, I thought something that we did a really good job of last year was, you know, the power of the high five, playing for the team baseball. You know, 29 other teams talk about, you know, hitting with runners in scoring position, you know, getting guys in from third base, having a 2-strike approach. And our guys really bought into that and made that kind of our identity. So I think, you know, keeping the emphasis on, you know, our foundational pieces and what we believe in, but, you know, letting those guys continue to grow as big leaguers.
Chris, the one I wanted to ask you about, we just saw on the screen, Oscar Gonzalez. He's a guy left unprotected for the Rule 5 draft. Luckily, there was no Rule 5 draft, so he's able to stay with the organization. The book on him was ton of power, a lot of holes in the swing. That isn't the guy that we saw last year. He hit 300, close to 300. Was there adjustments to his swing, or are the holes still there? You know, like, how is it that he came up one way and was completely different when he got to the majors? There was power there, but I think there wasn't as much power, certainly, as what I was expecting, but there was a lot more contact than I thought he would have.
I think he kind of just fell into the approach and the identity of the team. You know, I think there was so much contact around him that, you know, that kind of came part of his identity. I don't think the power, you know, left by any means. I think, you know, on the flip side of what we mentioned earlier about, you know, there being a book on guys, I think he's going to continue to grow into that, and you'll see more power this year and, you know, in the future as he gets more comfortable and he starts having a book on other pitchers and, you know, understanding what they're trying to do to him, you know, like you saw through the minor leagues with the power numbers. So, you know, I think power comes through experience and growth, and, you know, he's just continue to grow into that.
You know, we always talk about the veteran players being mentors to the young players. But when we talk about the new rules, right, no shift, they banned the shift. We got the pitch clock coming in. We had Will Brennan on last week, and he made the point of, hey, most of us have played with these rules in the minors. Because your team, I mean, you don't have a lot of older players. Like on this team, Jose Ramirez is old, which he's not, but for this team he is. So is that a scenario where the younger players can kind of help the few veterans on the team because they're used to these things?
Yeah, I think we're, you know, in a good spot with that, with how youthful our roster is. A lot of these guys have come up with these rules already. So, you know, it's nothing new. Granted, you know, they've had a year in the big leagues, you know, to get away from that. But, you know, I think in spring training, it's going to be conversations, and we're going to lean on those young guys a lot, you know, on how to approach that, you know, with the new pitch clock and getting in the box and not being able to call time and, you know, all the different things that, you know, we're going to have to grow into. But I think we're positioned with our roster, you know, to be successful in those areas.
Obviously, Val, you guys, I mean, we talked about it already. You don't rely on power as a team. You rely on your ability to put the ball in play, to get on base, to spray the ball around. I'm wondering, like, my first thought was these new rules will help you guys more than other teams because you're not hitting home run. You're not a home run hitting team. But then I'm thinking, well, you guys, you have a lot of players that kind of spray the ball to all fields anyway, so maybe it's not as big a deal. How do you look at this rule, whether it helps or hurts the team?
I don't think it changes our identity. We talk about you got to use the whole field to earn the whole field. So, I think we had, guys throughout our lineup, Jose, Naylor, that might have been shifted. And I think it opens up a lot of hits. It's going to open up a lot of damage for those guys. So I think, we got a lot of upside coming as far as that goes. But, our guys know how to use the whole field. And, without banning the shift, I don't think it really changes, how we're going to approach things or, go about our business. We're just going to continue to embrace, the personnel that we have.
Val, the one thing we also talked to Will about last week is the fact that this season in all AAA parks, they'll be using the mechanical strike zone. And if you just follow the bouncing ball here, typically when they are instituting these things in the minor leagues, that means they're not far away from the big leagues. And I don't know if it will be the 2024 season, when it's coming, but it feels like it is. What are your thoughts on the automatic strike zone, the mechanical strike zone, and what does that do to the game long term?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I like the human element of having the umpires and, the gamesmanship between, how you communicate with them, how they can control the game. I'm not as familiar with it. I haven't been around that when they instituted it in the fall league and, through some of the minor leagues now coming up. I think there's probably some kinks, and I know they're working through that, like breaking balls clipping the front of the zone and falling under the zone and, how they can perfect that. I'd be interested to see how that works in AAA, especially with high-level baseball like that. I know we're talking about pace of play. Hopefully that, helps some of it. But, I need to do more research to have a better answer for you guys.
We actually talked to Tito about that last year, and he said they tried it during the COVID restart spring training, and it was terrible. He said balls in the dirt were being called strikes.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
And they have a long way to go on the technology before they can really institute it in the majors.
Yeah.
Yeah, how the strike zone's established is, breaching that plane in the front of the plate. So, if those breaking balls clip the bottom of the zone in front of the plate and bounce, that's getting called a strike. So I think there's some kinks that they need to work out, as far as that stuff goes. But, if that's the direction they're going, then so be it. But, I definitely appreciate the umpires. And I think that, is the way the game's been for hundreds of years that, we got to keep some tradition in place as well.
Val, I want to talk about one of the new guys here, Josh Bell. I think Josh Bell's been a good major league player for a long time. Not long time, a decent number of years. I've always felt, as someone who's not part of the game, but a big, huge baseball fan and an outside observer, I've always felt there was another level, at least to his offensive game. Do you see that too? I mean, is there another step that he can take offensively?
Yeah, I think, adding a bat like that, having the profile that we've seen out of him, obviously very contact oriented. He's got a knack for getting on base. But I do think, there is some upside in power. As he transitions, he's been in the Central and the National League and then moving to the West with the Padres. I guess on the East too with the Nationals. So yeah. He's kind of bounced around, but hasn't spent time in this division. So, I think there's probably, there's going to be a learning curve for him with the new pitchers, but also, the pitchers trying to adjust to him. So I do think, having that presence in the lineup is going to help us. I think it's going to break up some of the contact as well that, every inning we're going to have somebody that's a threat, be Naylor, Jose, Josh, guys coming through the lineup that every inning, there's going to be somebody that can hurt you. So, I'm real excited to see how Tito puts together his lineup and, the production we can get out of Josh.
The other new guy, of course, Mike Zunino, is a guy who, especially for a catcher, has big-time power. He's never going to hit for an average. He's not that kind of hitter. But, he missed a lot of time last year due to injury. How is he? I know it's still very early, but how is he health-wise, and what are your expectations for him?
I saw him last week. He looks great. I was really, really excited to see the progress coming back. Having that time off and, finally being healthy away from that injury. I'm excited to see what he can do. Like, just like the other guys I mentioned, adding some slug to the lineup like that, I think is only going to help us with, the profile that we have with all the contact. And, if we can put traffic on the bases for those guys, I think good things are going to happen for us this year.
Val, who's best positioned to make the biggest jump from last year to this upcoming season?
Ooh, good question. I think all of our guys had a lot of success. I think different, maybe statistical categories we're going to see, a lot of guys make jump. I do believe our power numbers are going to go up this year across the board. So, talking about Oscar Gonzalez, I do see him having some big numbers, having a big year out of that. So I'm probably looking at him maybe to have the most upside coming up, coming off the year, hitting 300, doing what he did in the postseason. But, I think we're really going to see a jump in those slug numbers for him.
Is that the biggest point of emphasis this offseason, is getting to more power?
I think it's something that it's the nature of the beast, like that's the industry that, power plays. I think we did it, a little bit more unconventional last year with the contact first profile, but, that was really just embracing the identity of the team and the personnel that we had. So, I think it helps us. I think, we saw, when we go into the postseason or you play some of these big teams like the Yankees that, can have that 3-run home run and bail you out or put a game away. I think we're starting to compete with those lineups now, having that power potential that, we can put a game away with one swing. We can get ourselves back into a game with one swing.
As many young players as you had on the big league roster that had success, this organization still got a ton of guys in the minors who are really good. One of those guys, Bo Naylor, who obviously came up at the end of last year, Josh's brother. It didn't play a lot. But now with both Hedges and I forgot your backup catcher.
Maley.
Yeah,
Maley.
both gone. Maley couldn't think of it. Bad job out of me. Naylor obviously has a chance to be the number 2 catcher, competing for that role. From an offensive standpoint, do you think he's ready for the big leagues?
Yeah, I know when he came up last year, lack of playing time is tough. Sporadic at bats, trying to put things together. But I do. He has the pedigree. He's got the profile. He's shown it all through the minor leagues. I think the biggest thing with Bo is just going to be getting consistent reps. So, it's tough being a young player, going from playing every day, knowing you're going to be in the lineup, getting 4 or 5 ABs every night, to playing 2-3 days a week, pinch hit, finishing a game, whatever it may be. Just more on the mentality side of trying to separate, success and not chasing numbers when, your playing time is sporadic. So I do see him making an impact for us. I think this spring is going to be pretty important for him, how he comes in. And, I think the opportunity that is there for him, it's his to take.
Val, last year it was that conveyor belt of young guys coming up that the diehard fans knew were in the pipeline, but a lot of the Guardians fans were surprised at the number of guys that were coming up and not just making their debuts, but having success. Can you give us a name of someone that the average Guardians fan doesn't know today, but will know well next season?
I think Will Brennan and Tyler Freeman are going to be impactful guys for us. Them throughout the year. Will did a great job, to finish the season and then into the playoffs. But I do feel those guys are going to make, big impacts for our roster, as we go forward. Giving guys days off, bridging gaps for guys. But I think there's a lot of upside in both of those guys, and where they find their at bats, I think they're really going to help us out. Not just in the short term, but for years to come.
Well, we talked recently about the fact that it seems like superstar players rarely become managers and coaches, let alone have success. It's usually guys that were more grinders, good players, middle of the road players, whatever. You look at the managers in baseball. I can't think of one manager in baseball that was a superstar. Right? I mean, who? I don't think there's any.
Well,
right
Dusty Baker was pretty
Dusty
good.
Baker.
Dusty, yeah, Dusty. But Dusty's been around forever.
Yeah.
I mean, That's true. Dusty was an excellent player.
Yeah.
But for the most part, most of the managers, some of them didn't play at all or played in the minors. But do you think there's something to it, or is it just, especially nowadays, the superstars make so much money they don't want to bother coaching and managing?
No, I think there's something to, you see a lot of utility players. You see a lot of those guys, like you mentioned, become coaches, become managers. I think there's something to you look at the game through a different lens. You're always that grinder. You're trying to find different ways to, find an edge against, your opponent. So I think, your mindset is there, maybe going through your playing career, and then you take that into coaching. But, I don't know if that's, the way it's always been, but, it just seems like that's the way it is right now.
Our producer McNuggets has something for you. Mike, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, Val, I was doing a lot of research yesterday to get ready for this interview, and I came across this stat that on August 24th, 2010, you got your first major league hit on your first pitch you saw. Did you know going into that at bat you were swinging first pitch, guaranteed? Like, did it matter what was thrown? And do you remember who it was off?
It was off of Santiago Casilla.
Correct.
In San Francisco. I do remember. You probably could have shot a ball out of a cannon that night, and I was going to be ready to hit. Having had thousands of at bats going through the minor leagues, I remember being on deck, trying to act cool, and I couldn't get my knees to stop shaking. So I didn't go up there with the thought of swinging at the first pitch. I just didn't want to come back to the dugout with my bat. So I was ready to go, whatever that was going to be.
It's funny that you say you were nervous, because Will Brennan, when he was on with us, admitted to us, which we thought was cool, because some guys wouldn't admit this, that he was nervous. Like, he was able to keep it cool, and we didn't know it outwardly, but he admitted in the playoffs that internally he was nervous. And that's normal, right? I mean, there's nothing weird with that.
It is. I mean, they're human. These guys, they get paid, to do this game. They're the 1%, but they're human. They have emotion just like everybody else, and you play on those stages, and especially for our guys with how young our roster is, going into Yankee Stadium, it's stuff that you watch on TV, and now you get to stand, put your spikes in the dirt there. So, as nerve-wracking as that can be, I think there's a lot of excitement that surrounds it.
Coach Val, you just mentioned dealing with some of these young guys. We had Will on last week, and Will used a couple words that I know the guys on the panel don't understand because they're over 40. When you talk to some of these guys who just come up, and with this roster whose average age is 23 and a half, do you need a translator sometimes to understand? I mean, he used
He's not that old.
Well, no, but he's a little older than me, and I struggle to understand some of the words Will Benson's. He called it a celly, which I knew was a celebration. If you guys couldn't put two and two together, that was a celebration. But what's it like dealing with some of these super young guys coming up, Chris, who, use a little different lingo than you and I? We're the same age bracket, so I feel like we could communicate on that level.
Yeah. There's definitely times where I'm like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, or what certain things are. But you get around them, enough. You start piecing together the language. But yeah, there's definitely times where I'm like, I'm not out of it that long, and I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So.
Big fan fest this weekend. What should the fans who come down expect, Chris?
Man, I'm excited. This will be my first one. I know, the pandemic kind of, put the brakes on it for a little bit, but I think there'll be some panels. I know there's going to be some coaching clinics. There's going to be autographs. I think it's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully we get a good turnout out there, and I think we're all excited to see the fans and get out there, right before the primer, before spring training, and then getting out to see you guys for opening day back in Cleveland.
Yeah, fans are chomping at the bit. I've talked to a lot of them that are going. They're very excited, especially because it's been wiped out the last couple of years.
It would be fun if the players ran around dumping champagne over the heads of the fans. That would be kind of cool.
The celly, yeah.
That's exactly right.
A fake
we'll call
celly.
it the Guards Fest celly. And for $5, you get to go into a little booth and have a player dump a bottle of champagne over.
Got to get the goggles though. The player.
And they'll take your picture.
Back in the day, the guys didn't wear goggles. The guys now are soft. They're wearing the goggles.
I see that.
Back in the day, nobody wore goggles. What's happening? Thanks. Thanks, Chris.
Val, excellent job. We're behind you 1,000,000%. I can't wait to see what you guys put together this year. It's going to be fun to watch.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.